Welcome, everybody, to the SmallTown Collectibles YouTube channel. I'm Jimmy Don Kerr. My guest today is a channel that I've followed for a while, and I find this channel really interesting. You're going to find all kinds of information on here. Comic book news, info on the current comic market, top 10 videos, 5 books that you shouldn't be investing in, market analysis, comic book hauls. And the thing maybe I'm most interested to talk about is Financial Fridays. So this guy has been a dealer in the comic book industry for the past 15 years, and I can't wait to talk to him. Everybody join me in welcoming to 10 Questions, David from Comic Book Investments.
How's it going? Thanks for having me on here. It's awesome. I love doing these types of shows. Very fun.
Cool, man. So I'm going to jump right into it, David. And the first question is always the same. And it is like, what got you into the hobby? As far as comic books itself, like what got you into the hobby?
So, I mean, my dad was a dealer since I was born. So I was always around comic books. I would say if it was a specific comic book, I mean, I was super into Ninja Turtles. I say it all the time. But the Hulk, I was really into the Hulk. I couldn't tell you why I was into the Hulk so much as a kid. But, and growing up, since my dad was a dealer, I actually never really read modern comics for my time, which would have been late 80s, early 90s. I actually read all Silver Age stuff. So that was the stuff that I actually grew up reading was Silver Age. I collected, and I would, out of all my brothers, I was the only one that loved working for my dad. Unless he forced us to work, which he did sometimes, but I would always like do whatever I could. In the beginning, I would take, bags and backer boards and I'd put them together, and he would pay me a penny per one, and I was little. But then as I got older, I got faster. And then he goes, whoa. I'm paying you like double minimum wage here. That can't happen. So then he changed me to hourly. But I collected nearly the complete run of Hulk. I think I went up to 377 at the time. I think that's as high as I went. Maybe got to 400. I doubt it. But I didn't have 1, 2. I might have had 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I had 102 up. I had 2 copies of Hulk 181. I had Tales of the Astonished 59 all the way up to 101. And then I had a bunch of odds and ends. But Hulk was my favorite. And I also had a complete collection of Turtles as well. 1 through, was it 62, 63 or something like that?
Cool. So I've heard you talk about your dad before, and that he was one of the biggest comic dealers around, that he actually had a catalog that he put out. Can you talk about that? Because I don't remember seeing anything like that coming up, collecting like an actual catalog with his books in it.
So interesting enough, my brothers found someone on YouTube who went through his old comic collection and found an old catalog. My dad's, I was like, oh, can you send that to me? Like, I'll pay for it and all this kind of stuff. But back in the day, there wasn't the internet. So what he would do is he would go to different conventions, get people's addresses, and then it started once a year, he would go down to the local newspaper and he'd have a mock-up of a catalog, and they'd print a bunch of them. That's when he forced us to work, and we put the catalogs in the little envelopes and put a little sticker on it. And he did that once a year. Then it turned to, I think, 4 times a year. So every quarter. And it would just have like a list of his inventory. People would call in and go, this is the book I want, blah, blah, blah. And you say, okay, write down their name. They would mail him a check. He would then, mail them the book. And, it was like you had to trust his grading, So if he called something, a VG, which is a 4.0, then you just trusted his grading. And that's how he did it for many, many years. And then he kind of retired right around when, like, I think it was like 2002 or something. I was still in high school. So, I mean, the internet was around, but eBay wasn't as big as it is now.
Yeah, so I mean, I just think that's interesting because I remember growing up and around Christmas time, the Sears Roebuck catalog would come out, or you remember those, and how it was always so much fun to look through and look for toys. And when I heard you say that, that's what I pictured, and I was like, to be able to buy comics like that, because you're right, back then there was no internet. You couldn't just hop on Amazon or eBay or whatever and purchase whatever you want and have it delivered to your door, you to sell. And if I don't know how conventions were back then, like when you were growing up, did he do a lot of conventions? And
we did the San Diego Comic-Con every year.
Every year. Did you travel? Did you go with him when he would do those?
Yeah, because we lived in Washington State, and so we would take like a big trailer or something up there, and he would do it. I remember the last year he did it, and he was like, "It's falling apart," He's all jaded. He remembers doing a convention with Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird from the Turtles, and he's like, "Yeah, they had some indie book, the Turtles, and no one cared about them."
Think about that. Isn't that crazy? I said, no, it's I just, my situation, anybody that's watched this before knows that I have an uncle that I used to go with a lot. He picked and sold at flea markets and things like that, and he sold trading cards and comic books and things, and I used to just go with him all the time. It was my dad's brother, and me and my dad would go hang out with him, and it was just a lot of fun, and I just I recall that very fondly. Now he didn't make me work, but I have a little bit of OCD, and so I like sorting things, and and he would call me, "Hey, I just bought in a whole new set of comic books or trading cards or whatever. You want to come out and help me sort?" And I used to go out there and sit with him and sort through, and it was just very. I have fond memories of doing that with him. Is it the same for you? Thinking back on those times, are those fond memories, or you're like, dude,
100%,
I had to work?
100%. Any collection he would go out and get, because that's how you did it back in the day. People would call in and go, "Hey, I have comics." Like now people could just find out what they're worth and go on eBay, go on Heritage, go on Comic Click, whatever. But back then, if you had a bunch of comics, you have no idea how to sell them. And so he would get collections, and I pretty much was his go-to person he would take, right, if it was far away. Yeah, but I remember like every collection that I can remember, when I was a kid going and getting with him was, definitely fun. I loved it.
Yeah, no, I had a blast with my uncle too. He's passed away now, but I just had such a good time with him doing that, and just really always enjoyed it, and it was such fond memories. So I think that's cool. All right, so question 2 is, as far as comic books are concerned, are you a reader? Or do you just collect, or do you just resell? Like, what's your, do you read right now?
No. The only time I will read is if I have to be like super into the book. Okay, so I do read comics from time to time. Like older ones, I'll look at a cover and I'm like, what is this? Like I read this one, I can't remember, this old action comic where Superman is touching everything and he turns everything to gold. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? I need to figure out what's going on. And there's this panel in there where this kid was like, "Superman, can I have your autograph?" And he's like, "Sure." And he takes the pen and signs his name or whatever, and gives the pen back, but it's gold. And the kid gets all pissed off because his shiny red pen is now gold. And it's like, dude, that Superman just turned that thing into like, I don't know what the price of gold was, but a lot more than a shiny little red pen made of plastic. So you should be thinking. And he's all mad at Superman. "I hate you, Superman." So once in a while I'll read those. But as far as modern books, it has to really, really interest me. I started The Last Ronin of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I cannot stand waiting like 50,000 years for the whole thing. I'm like, once it comes out, I'll read the whole thing. I started reading Miracle Man, the Alan Moore from the 80s. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. But I was like, I need to get the whole set first, because there's nothing worse than starting something and then you don't have it, and then you have to wait, then you lose interest, and then you forget what happened. I just want to go right through. So I would say very rarely do I read a book. Some people have made some suggestions in the comments, like someone was, now I'm blanking on the name, something like that, something house in the lake.
Oh, Nice House on the Lake.
Yeah, so people have been raving about that, and I'm like, I'll check it out. I'll look it up. Yeah, everyone's been saying it's really good, so I might check it out. Immortal Hulk, I'll probably read. I read a couple issues of Immortal Hulk, because Hulk's my favorite. But as far as collections, people ask me if I have a personal collection. Not really. I have a couple things, but I had to sell it all to start the business, so mostly I resell.
You resell. So yeah, I mean, and there's different ways that people purchase and do, and it kind of makes sense with how you grew up that you would be a reseller, right? So,
Yeah.
but my uncle didn't read either, and he collected some things, but he collected like old Western comic books. Like when
Mm.
it's nostalgia based, for him when he grew up, it was Roy Rogers and those guys that he watched on
Lone
TV.
Ranger.
Lone Ranger, and he liked those books, and they weren't worth as much as some of the stuff that he was selling. I mean, it was, but that's what he would keep because he just loved it.
Yeah.
So no, that's interesting. All right, so question 3, and I always find this interesting too. And again, it comes back to how I ran around with my uncle and how we found things, and where we live in Eastern Kentucky, or where I live in Eastern Kentucky. You have to be very creative about how you find books because the closest LCS to me is an hour away.
Oh.
And so we have to go to flea markets. We have to go to antique stores. We have to go. Do you have, as a dealer, do you have a favorite way to find books, or are you primarily looking to buy collections, or do you go to antique shops, flea markets, and things like that?
No. It's if I'm in the neighborhood of a flea market, antique store, something like that, I'll pop in. But it's like 99% of the time they don't have anything related to what I'd buy, and then if they do, it's always stuff that I wouldn't buy. Primarily, it's collections. Like I get emails all the time from people wanting to buy collections. I mean, I showcase them on my channel when I get them in. I get more than that, but yeah, it's mostly just people hitting me up, wanting to go collections, and yeah, other things like that, online stuff. Doing the auctions and comic auctions and stuff like that.
Cool.
That's primarily.
So yeah, I just wondered. I know, like I said, we used to pick. I mean, which back then it was different. You're not going to find an Action Comics in a barn now. Pretty much everybody has an idea that that's worth money, right? So it's a lot harder to do. But we used to go through barns. I mean, that was crazy the stuff we would do to find books. But it was still, like I said, it was fun. All right, so question 4, and we're going to start getting deep here. So question 4 is, why did you start your YouTube channel? Like, what inspired you to start the channel and start talking about comic book investing itself?
So I wanted to start a channel for a few reasons. The main reason wasn't comic book related. The main reason was I was like, well, I need to boost me so I can boost my music. So the whole purpose of starting a YouTube channel was to boost the fact that maybe I can get people listening to my music through the fact that I'm really into comic books, right? Because if I talked about music, it's like no one's going to listen to me, right? Because I'm just like a small fish in a big pond. But when it comes to comic books, I'm like, okay, like people will listen to me because I have all this stuff, right? It's easy. I can show them, some old golden age or something like that, and people are like, oh, this guy knows what his stuff. And the fact that I've been in business for over 13 years doing this full time. So that was the main reason. Another reason was that I like talking about this stuff, and I could talk about this stuff for all day long. And so I was like, okay. And I dabbled a little bit with a friend doing movie reviews of like MCU, DC movies and stuff like that, but never had my own channel dedicated to that. So, I mean, this is the stuff I'm into. Like, this is the stuff I look up and watch and do anyways. So I was like, well, I can do a channel.
Well, one of the things that I found is, and really in getting to know people in the YouTube community is, like, I love this stuff too, and I could talk about it, but my wife could care less. And my friends, I don't have friends that are really into it like I am. And I found, and I say it all the time, I found something I didn't know I was missing, and that was a whole community of people that are nerds like me, and I like talking about this stuff. Yeah. And was that part of it too for you, or do you have an inner circle or a group around you that are totally into it?
I have a couple friends that are into it a little bit, yeah, but not compared to like the YouTube community. And that's what, like, I've said it in a couple videos. Like, that was the one thing I didn't realize I would like so much was, the response and the comments. And like, I try as hard as I can to respond to every single person, as long as it's not a troll or a negative thing. I just ignore those. But if someone has a general question, I give them a genuine answer, and even if it's like really detailed, I'll try to give them my best analysis, my best answer for whatever, or if it's just a quick question, yeah, I really try. And that's one thing that I generally didn't know that I would find that I liked about YouTube, but I did.
Yeah, no, it's probably my favorite thing about YouTube. And, and I'm from that generation where I have one foot in the technology and I have
Mm-hmm.
one foot back in the other, the old school ways. And I never dreamed that I could make friends on YouTube, and
Mm-hmm.
it's been a really, really fulfilling thing for me. And I've had a lot of success in my life. I'm very, very blessed. And, and I enjoy this as much as I do anything. But it's really almost therapeutic in a way to get to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like I read Nice House on the Lake, and I love it, and there's somebody I can talk to, about it. So
I haven't
no, I
read
think
it, so don't spoil it.
I won't. No,
Okay.
you will really dig it though. You should read it. I mean
Okay.
that. What was I going to take? Something Is Killing the Children's really good. I'm really digging the current Batman Detective Comics run. I think that's awesome. If you were looking for any recommendations, that's a good one too. So I want to talk about some of your content because I find your content. I mean, I watch it, quite a bit, just looking for general information. Um, what's your inspiration for your content? You're just, things that you're interested in that you just want to share with people that you think is informative. Because, like you've got top 5 books that you don't buy right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, those are
go
my
ahead.
more popular ones. So for me, it's really hard because there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about that people could care less, right? And it gets like a few views, right? And it's like, so there's like that balance of me talking about what I want to talk about, like the Financial Fridays, right? Generally, those don't do very well. They're always my least performing videos as far as a series goes. But that's stuff I really love talking about. And I think it's important. Like, I'm not some guru, I don't know everything, but I do know how to run a business and I do know how to have finances. Like, I own 2 homes now. And like generally people my age don't even have one. And I'm not doing this off a lot of money. I just know how to save. I know how to budget. And I feel like that's very important to tell people and, help them through that kind of stuff because it'll make their life so much easier and better in the long run. And so, but those don't do very well, and then it's like, also a lot of time, I don't want to bash any other YouTuber, but I've seen a lot of YouTube's channels where they constantly hype up books all the time. Like, and I'm like, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with hyping up a book, but I like to put things in perspective because if you're hyping up a book, you're hyping up for one reason, not because it's a good book, because you think it's a good investment, right? And you can turn a profit and make money or whatever. But I'm trying to put things in perspective for people. It's like, look, this is why this book is popular. This is why it's popular now. This is why it won't be popular in the future. This is why it's a risky investment. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would look at it from a different angle. Like, look, this book that's hot right now, there's nothing unique or special about it. It probably won't be hot again. Like they had I think it was Go Collect. They did like their top 5 hottest book, and there's some Conan on there. I can't remember. Maybe he's 21 or something like that. I'm like, there's nothing special about this book. There's no reason you should buy it. I don't know why it's hot right now. It makes no sense. Like that's a bad buy, right? But I always say, if you love the book, buy the book because who cares? But if you're looking from purely an investment point of view, which I'm the comic book investments, then it's not good. And so I just like to put things in perspective for people. And because the way I see it, if a new collector / investor, whatever you want to call them, comes into the market, buys a comic book with the intent of making money, and it drops by 50%, and they lose, hundreds, thousands of dollars over the course of buying these hyped up books, and then they're like, well, this is dumb. Now there's potentially someone that could love comic books is gone out of the market. They got burned. They're not coming back. So I think it's only fair to put things in perspective and let people know, like, hey, because I don't want people getting burned. And that's why I always say, if you're doing this investments, buy blue chip comics. That's the best.
And that's one of the things I like about your channel is when I'm looking for information, and I'll kind of lead into this, but I'm an analytical person by nature,
Mhm.
and you use a lot of graphs, and you're kind of talking in percentages. Like this has gone down 44% in the past 30 days. This was its peak. Here's why it peaked when it did, and then it's now it's kind of ventured down to here, and that talks to me as far as what I'm looking for in content. But I want to talk to you about kind of today's market. And it's been crazy, right? I mean, just like the prices have been crazy, you've got a lot of new people into the hobby. But one of the things, and I'm talking about me specifically, is I look more at my comic books, the ones that I have that are truly investments, as it is now part of my portfolio.
Yep.
And even my stock guys, my financial advisors, the people that I talk to on a daily basis, we now calculate my comic book collection, the true, what I consider my true PC, my true investment pieces. We now incorporate that into my financial analysis of myself. When I'm looking through and I'm doing my net worth and we're doing all those things and what do we insure, things like that. In your business, are you finding that there are a lot of new people in the hobby that are investing in these blue chip books, that are investing in those as true investment pieces to try to diversify?
100%. I don't think there's that many new comic book collectors per se that are in the market. It's more of investors. So there's lots of investment groups that I know of that literally just buy to sell later or hold, and they're groups. They're not an individual person. And it's mostly a lot of investors. That's why the big books are going for so much. But then it trickles down. Not everyone can afford, Action Comics #1, so they go to the fancy 15. Then you'll go to Hulk 181. You just, work your way down, whatever you're comfortable with. But for example, my other brother, who is not in the business with me, he came to me and he's like, "Look, I sold my company. I'm trying to diversify. I have real estate. I have stocks, all this stuff. I want to get into comics." And so I gave him a list of books, and he bought just multiple copies of those books. And that's what I would say is, I think comics are a great investment because, I have the Overstreet Price Guide, the first one, and what was it, like an Action Comics #1 was like $300 or something like that in it. Where is it today? In the millions. So yeah, with all these movies coming out and all these, such a rich, so much nostalgia involved with this stuff, I can see comics not going anywhere in terms of dropping in value. Like I could never fathom a day in our lifetimes where an Action Comics #1 is worth less than a penny. Like, it's never going to happen.
Sure.
A stock
no, and
could.
that book, a stock could, but something like that's going to continue to appreciate in value. And and it's funny, you talked about that investment group. Like I was talking to some people around here, some people that I do business with that I'm partners on some other things with that we do some things in real estate. And I said we all ought to put together some money and go and buy some of these books. And look at these major books and buy them because I think over time we can get a great return on our investment. Now, they're not into comic books like me, so they think I'm an idiot. But but when I'm looking at, because I'm seeing people do that with trading cards.
Yep.
I'm seeing like I have several of the Jordan rookies from 1986. My uncle worked me like a dog that year cutting weeds, and he paid me an 86 Fleer basketball cards. And I joke all the time. I used to give him a hard time. I got the best of that deal because they worked me to death. And I think I ended up with like 10 boxes of the 86 Fleer basketball. Now you think about that.
Wait, 10 boxes of the Jordan?
Of the Jordan. I have several.
You're telling me you have Michael Jordan's rookie card. You have 10 boxes of just Michael Jordan rookie?
Oh, no. 10 boxes at the time, a box of basketball cards.
Oh, you're talking about with packs in it.
With packs in it. And a box of basketball cards was $36. And it had 36 packs. in the box.
Oh man.
And so, and they would work me. I'd do anything for a box of basketball cards. I'd do anything for a pack of
You still
basketball
have them?
cards. Oh yeah, I have 10
Still?
Michael. I have 10 Michael Jordan rookie cards. They're off being graded right now.
So you'll
I
see
have
them
one,
next year.
yeah, right. I have one that has the potential to be a 10, to be a Gem Mint 10.
Really?
I have one. The other, because back then, if you recall, when they would print those things, the printing would always be off. Like they wouldn't be
centering.
centered. They
Yeah.
wouldn't be centered. I have one that is dead centered because my uncle, after Jordan kind of became his thing, we took those cards because I had some boxes that weren't open. I wish I hadn't opened them now. I eventually did. But we took them and we encased them in the glass holders that they had back then. We encased them in those, and yeah, I have 10 of them. Like I said, sent them all off to be graded. I got one that's a possibility of a 10. All the others will probably come back 8.5, 9s. I've got some that'll come back 7s, like that. But to be honest with you, that's probably going to end up being how I put my daughters through college. So
Wow.
it's just amazing how those things can gain in value. I told that big long
Did
story
you-
too.
Did you take your Jordan cards and put them in like a screw case?
Yes.
Okay, so that they will penalize.
Yeah. Well, no.
Because
When I sent them off to
Have a
be
slight
graded,
curve.
no. When I sent them off to be graded, like I did a lot of research on what to do. So these weren't like your normal screw case.
Okay.
These things were this big. I mean, like they were big. It was like encased in glass all the way around. It was almost like a picture frame.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that my uncle had for like his Mickey Mantle cards. Like he had, Mickey Mantle cards and Hank Aaron's and Babe Ruth's, and he had those cards, Honus Wagner. And it was something that he used, and it didn't give you the bend that you're talking about. So no, we did like he was all over that. And yeah. And over the years, as those things gained in value, he and I would talk a lot about them. Like he would come up, we would go through my stuff, we'd go through his stuff. He ended up having a fire where he lost a lot of it. It was very sad. I cried. Me and him both cried. Sat on the back of his truck, 2 grown men, and cried because that back corner, he had this place in his garage where he built it in his garage and put a door on the back of it so that I could come in it. From the outside. I didn't have to come to the house. And he had all these cards that he had in there, all these comic books, all these different things. And that part of the house burnt longer than any of the other. It was just very sad. We were, it was a devastating day. But no, it's, I've always kind of been involved in it, but it has blown my mind. And especially when Last Dance came out, what trading cards started to do. You can't buy a box of trading cards right now, a good high-end brand for less than $6,000.
I know.
And there's 10 cards in them.
I know it's so insane. I had like many years ago, I invested in a bunch of basketball and baseball cards, and I got a Michael Jordan rookie. And The Last Dance came out, and I was like, I need to do some work on this house. I'm like, I'm gonna sell a card. So I sent it in to get graded. I want to say it came back like a 5, I think. I can't remember. And then I was like, wow, I think I ended up like quadrupling or like 5xing my money on this card in like 2-3 years. And I'm like, that's better than most of the stocks I have, bro.
Yeah, well, and I look at it because I'm in the market and I look at it, and the return on investment really for a lot of these comic books, specifically the blue chip books, is better. You get a better rate of return than a lot of things that you can invest in the stock market.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like most people considering if you make about 10% a year, that's good, right? A year, 10% a year. So you put, and to me, it's just like, I was like, you could easily make more of that in a comic. And you don't even have to make a lot of knowledge. You literally just go down my top 10 comic list and you can buy any one of those and you'll probably make more than 10%. Yeah, you'll have like, if you would have bought it in May or something like that, it was at its peak and it would have went down, but eventually it's come right back up. But it's just like, yeah, that's like insane, like to me.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a trip. It really is. And it's something I just, started paying attention to, and my financial guys started paying attention to. They were like, did this really go? Because we're tracking it now. Like we're actually tracking it like we do a stock. And they're like, did this really go up that amount of money? I'm like, yes, it's insane. There is something to this.
I would say here are the pros and cons, though. With comics, you have to find that right buyer. With stocks, you just hit a little button and it sells, right?
Very
And
true.
if it's stock price is at $700, you click sell and it sells for $700. You might have some fees or something. Most places don't have fees though. But with comics, if you want that top dollar, you have to find that buyer, and then you're losing 10% if you're on like Comic Link. You're losing 13% if you're on eBay. Then you're losing like 30%, 35% if you're on Heritage. And then on top of that, if you use like Heritage, Comic Link, or Comic Deck, they'll put it in an auction, and then who knows? It might not go for top dollar. Most likely it won't. So there's all those factors in it. But then with stocks, you have to claim capital gains tax.
You do.
But with comics, if you sell at private party, there you go. You get all the money.
There you go. We didn't say if what the IRS doesn't know won't hurt them.
Yeah, exactly.
But there is absolutely some truth to that. I mean, and it's just funny to me in what I do day to day, and then how my people's attitude towards it has changed, and they've even started talking to some of their people who are interested in books. Like they're starting to bring it up as an option, to diversify portfolio. And I said, it's just interesting to me that has occurred in this hobby that I've loved for so long. So I do, before we move on, I want to talk about Financial Fridays.
Okay.
Because, I start watching your channel primarily because I'm looking for a little comic book knowledge. I'm looking for some knowledge about what books I should be looking at, why this book's going up. I'm looking for that. So I find your channel, right? And then all of a sudden I come across Financial Fridays. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about how millennials are living paycheck to paycheck. You're talking about when's the right time to buy a house. How did that tie in? Like, where did the idea come in to tie that into the comic book aspect?
So, like I said, I mainly started YouTube as a to promote me and my music kind of thing, hoping that. But the original channel I wanted to start before comics was a financial channel, right? And then I was like, after a while, I was like toying with all these ideas, and I was like, no one's gonna listen to me. Who am I, right? I'm just some guy. So I was like, okay, I'll do comics, and I'll throw in my financial things on Friday, like my Financial Fridays, and that can talk about it there. And because I was like, no one's good. So originally it was supposed to be financials was my main thing I want to talk about, but I was like, no one's going to listen to me. So maybe with comics, they'll actually listen to me. And so that's how I kind of went with comics, and I included my financials because my whole brand is more about like investments, financials. That's why it's comic book investments. And, I really just want to honestly just help people with financial decisions and comic decisions, right? And like I said, I don't have a crystal ball, so it's not like I'm going to know for sure all this stuff. But, at least I can pass down some of my knowledge and stuff that's worked for me in the past.
And the thing is, though, is I think it's an interesting topic, and I think it's something that, especially with new collectors and people that are looking to invest, and you've got all this money or had all this money flying around, this past year with stimulus money and things like that, I think it's important to talk about in our community because, you can't go out and spend your rent money on comic books thinking that you're going to sell them and make money. Yeah. You have to live within your means, and then you have discretionary income that you can use and you can invest, whether it's a savings account or you invest in a stock or you invest in a comic book. And it was just interesting that you did that. And when I found it, because that's something that I'm, in finance, and I talk to people a lot about budgeting and, how to become home ready and things like that. And it's a lot of that talk. And I think the two really could intertwine because I think a lot of comic book, people that are buying comics got to understand about the budgeting process. And if you budget the right way, you can buy more.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And if you buy the right ones, you can flip them around and buy other ones, And I remember this comment I got, I was probably like 2-3 months into my channel. And I did one on about like homes. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I got a comment, and I still remember this. I always tell people it was my best comment. It was some guy was like, I wasn't sure. I was on the fence about buying a home. I watched your video, and that made me decide. I told my girlfriend or wife or something like that, and then we got a home. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. I had no idea I had like any influence over people like that. And I think the video was talking about how homes are a good investment because people kind of need to live somewhere, right? People don't need to own comics. They don't need to own stocks. But if you sell your house, you have to live somewhere else. So you have to buy another house. So there's always people needing somewhere to live. And, just like Lex Luthor and Superman 1, real estate, you buy up all the Arizona, coastline of Arizona after you bomb California. It's all about real estate. Real estate.
It's all about real estate. They don't make any more of it. That's what my papa always used to tell me.
Yep. And I can't remember who I was listening to, but they're talking about like the number one indicator of wealth is real estate. The number one indicator of wealth is real estate. So if you look at every rich person, every other thing, it all comes down to like, obviously there's people like Bezos who, make Amazon or something like that. But like your average person who's well off, the number one indicator is usually real estate. So
there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah. It's like, it's not like, and I try to like drive home this point, and people are like, oh, it's really expensive. It's really expensive. But I'm like, well, you still have to pay rent. So either put your money into the house where you're eventually going to get back and makes you money, or you have to give someone else rent and you get none of it at the end, and they only increase your rent as time goes on. So yeah, it's this, I'm trying to make people understand the power of money, and it's a good tool to have. So that's kind of what it's about.
No, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And there's statistically, home ownership, owning a home brings a lot of people out of poverty because they get that first home, and it just kind of perpetuates into the next generation, the owning a home. And, and it's a very, what we do is very fulfilling, and, we help people buy homes every day in my business. And it's a very fulfilling thing, and I really enjoy it. But I think the Financial Friday thing's interesting, and when I came across it on your channel, I was like, well, this is interesting. This is different, for a comic book channel. So so I was like, okay, all right, cool. All right, now question 5.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was saying like the two things don't have to be separate, right? You can be financially stable and love comics and also like, look, comics are an investment. You can read a comic book, and you can also make money off a comic book, and you could have, the life around you be financially stable. And
absolutely.
And your life is just so much easier when you can get all your finances under control.
No, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Yeah, like I said, I like the intertwining of the two. I think that's cool. All right, so question 5. And, you're a comic dealer, and I think a lot of people like me who, collect comic books think that would be the most awesome job in the world, is to sell comic books. So talk to us a little bit about what the day-to-day life of a comic book dealer really is and how much work it really is.
So, I watched this one YouTube show, and this guy was talking about owning a comic shop. And they asked him, it's like, why would you buy a comic shop when that 9 times out of 10 they fail, and we're in a downward market? People just read online. They don't need a brick and mortar. And he's like, the problem is with people that own a comic shop, it's usually people that go, I love comics. I have a collection of comics. I want to sell comics. And so I opened up a comic shop. And that's why they fail, because they're not business people. They're comic lovers. So a lot of people say like, oh, I love to be, do what I do. But the truth of the matter is it's a job, right? It's not, I sit around all day reading comics and, oh, what's Superman doing today, right? And that's why a lot of times I don't have modern books, because they don't make money. And that's the main truth. There is ways to make money off of modern books. I'm not saying that you can't, but, if I'm flipping a book or something like that, it's like getting into modern stuff. And by modern, I mean like brand new books. It's hard to flip those books for money. It takes time for books to have value to them and things like that. And I remember one of the first podcasts I did was with Big Will's Comics, and he was talking about how he's like, oh, I flipped this book, this book, this book. But he's like, but in the end of the day, he's like, yeah, I was only making like $5, $10, $5 per book. And it's like, I might be making 300%, but what's $5 going to do? Right. And it's like, and all the time you have to put into it. So it's really about time management too. So if I'm spending all this time flipping these books for 300%, going, a few dollars here and there of profit, though, it's like, how much time am I investing in it? So it's not so much that I don't sit around and read comic books. It's also, you have to be personable too, because you're trying to convince someone that, hey, I have a collection. Why should I sell it to, David? And it's like, you have to explain to him why and all this kind of stuff. And, why don't I go with Heritage, or why I don't sell it on my own? So you have to be personable, somewhat of a salesman. And yeah, I mean, I would say a typical day is I'm the buying side. My brother does more of the selling side. So I'm working with customers, past customers, seeing if people have anything they want to sell. A lot of emails, a lot of phone calls, customer relations, and checking out everything under the sun that's online. Going to all the major websites, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of, and then like I get stuff in and I have to process all the stuff. So that's what I was doing for this. I get stuff in, I have to like categorize it, make sure it's not missing pages, make sure it's, everything's there. What grade is this, figuring all that stuff out. So
it's work.
Yep, it's work. And here's another thing.
It's work.
When you don't work for yourself, your job is a 9 to 5. When you own your own business, it's, all day, every day, all night. There is no stop. There is no weekends that you take off. There's none of that stuff. And it's really hard for people that don't work for themselves to understand that. And they go, well, why would you do that? Why don't you take breaks? You can't take breaks because it's your business. If you take breaks, it could fail. Like, obviously, there's times where you can take breaks. I'm not saying you can't, but it's just like, it's a lot of mental stress because it's what you think about every day, all day long, is your business.
Right.
So it's not like I go in, I punch a clock, and then I leave, and then I'm like, hey, what are we going to do tonight? Let's go out to dinner. Let's go to a movie. Let's do this, So
sure. No, absolutely, man. No, I get it. No, like I said, I'm self-employed too, and it doesn't run if you don't run it. So it's, it's one of those things. But all right, so question 7 kind of leads me into something you just said, and you were talking about new books, right? And it comes back more to like this market that we're seeing right now. And like, for example, I walked in, the new Batman Urban Legend #6 came out, and Tim Drake came out as bisexual, right?
Yeah.
So I see that, and I see that this book is hot, and I run down to my comic book store to see if they've got any, and I pick up 7 of them and paid $6 something a piece for them after the discount. Put them on eBay, sell them all for $39.99 a piece. Every single one of them sold within a day. I don't know that that's really going to be a big key, down the road like that. And that's what you were talking about in new books. There's a chance to make some money, and I made a pretty decent profit on that. And I'll turn that around and buy something that I want. That's why I bought it, because I got a book in mind, and that's why I turned it around. I'll buy something I want. In this market, what do you think drives that? I mean, look, that book came out, but there have been characters in the past that have come out as gay or whatever, and those aren't like major keys today. I mean, what drives that?
So, I mean, I did a whole video on it. One thing I want to touch on that I want to bring to attention to. So, you sell it for, $30 profit, but then you have to take out fees. Maybe it's $25 profit, but then you have to look at like, well, how much is your time worth? Going to the store, picking it up, then taking pictures, then putting it on eBay, then shipping it and all the kind. Then what do you have to do? Someone doesn't have to pay. You have to relist it. Then, ship it. Someone's like, oh, you called this a 9.8, it's a 9.6. And then they return it. Then you lose some money on returns and all. So it's like, how much is all that time worth to you? Is kind of like what you have to ask yourself. So that's kind of like the issue with modern books is since there's such small margins, even though it's great percentage, it's just hard to make money. But I mean, that's still a good deal on that price. But that book in particular, I just think it's a mix of lazy writing and marketing for Robin coming out as bi. I think they do that just to, the writer doesn't, do you have any idea how hard it would be to write a good story? That's hard. Like a good captivating character, good villain, good reason why they're fighting, a good like reason why they are going against each other and they're like a formidable foe. That's hard. That's hard. And to get it to stick. I mean, these writers have probably been doing that, 90% of the comics they write and they can't even get it to stick. So you do this, it gets in all the news media and all that kind of stuff. But I showed, for example, Batman Damned #1, right? It showed Batman's penis. Gets pulled, like all this stuff. And where's that book today? It's nowhere. It's right. Lost so much of its value because it's just a marketing ploy. North Star came out as gay and got married. Where's that book today? It's not a key. No one cares because it's just, a flash in the pan. And so that's what's going to happen with Robin. So I made multiple videos on this explaining to people like, look, do not buy this as an investment. If you like it, you want to read it, good. By all means, do that. But if you think this is going to be like the next top book and it's going to be a huge book, it won't be.
Yeah, and that's the part that I think, if anything about the way it's been for the past year and a half changes, it'll be that some of that stuff will go away, on these new modern books. I think there's always going to be that FOMO and there's going to be the marketing and there's going to be that push. And I think that's always going to be there somewhat. I just don't think it will be, like I said, to be able to, I essentially went in the comic book shop on a Friday afternoon, picked up 7 books. It took me a minute and a half to list every single one of them. Mm. By the next morning, they all sold. Probably took me 25 minutes to pack them all up to ship them. After, shipping, I pay my fees. What I make, $150. That's not bad. I mean,
that's probably not bad.
Actually 10 minutes of time. But what you're saying, I appreciate what you're saying, though, is there's not that many books like that you can do that with over and over and over again to make a true profit. You've got to be able to invest in these blue chip key books.
Exactly. Like this Robin, that's more of an outlier. Like you can't just pick up the latest issue of Spider-Man and do the same thing, right?
Right.
So it's like these new books are a lot harder. Like obviously this Robin thing is like, a perfect storm of marketing, getting picked up in, I did it. I think I did my article from the Hollywood Reporter. Like, why is the Hollywood Reporter talking about comic books? Right? Because of this. So it made a big deal. And so when your average Joe who knows barely anything about comics and they see this, they go, oh, it's going to be the next biggest thing. There's a famous video where this news reporter, 93, I think, is at a comic store and Superman just died. And issue 75, I think it is. Mm-hmm. And this news reporter is like, oh, why are you in here? She's like, I don't know anything about comics, but this is going to be my daughter's college fund or my kid's college fund, and holding up multiple copies of Superman 75. I mean, that book today is maybe $100 in a 9.8
at best.
Yeah, still a good investment. I mean, over how many, almost 20 years? You should have taken that money and probably stuck it in Apple. But you still made money. What were the comics back then? $1.95 or something like that?
I think so, yeah.
Bucks. So, 50 times your money, but you have to get a case. That's like almost $50. So, I mean, right. Yeah, in a year of your life. So, yeah, it's, you gotta, it's like you gotta know what to invest in and why you're investing in. When everyone thought the Death Superman was going to be the biggest thing in the world, what'd that do to the book? It just made it worthless because everyone bought one.
That's right.
And I tried to do that with the King Spawn that just came out. And the variant, the Todd McFarlane said is going to be the rarest variant of all Spawns he's ever made, which turned out not to be true. Not his fault, but people pre-ordered so many, and I'm like, look, this book's not going to be worth anything. I mean, not worth anything, but like worth as much as you think it's going to be, because it's not rare. They made 1,700 copies, and everyone's going to CGC that thing and keep that thing in perfect 9.8 condition.
Well, and that brings me to question 7 is I've heard you talk a lot on your channel about in the modern market that these low print run variants are probably your best investment. And I was always taught that the cover A is really where you should go. If one holds value, it's generally going to be the cover A. Like, why do you think? I mean, I get it because of the low print run. There's not that many out there. You get supply, demand, kind of working into it, drives price up. Is that the basis behind when you're saying that? That's what you mean?
So it's like, look at Ultimate Fallout 4, right? Mm-hmm. That had a variant. I couldn't even tell you how to pronounce the last person's name that did the variant. But that variant in a 9.8 is worth about 20 to 25,000, right? So that's what you want when you're buying variants. You want the rare ones that are going to be super duper expensive. So if that book does blow up, you have the one that's the most valuable. And then also if the book doesn't really blow up, but it has a small fan base, they're going to want the rarest of the rare, because that's how comic collecting is. It's like, I want the thing that no one else really has. And so you want to go for something that has small print runs, because those have the best chance of going up in value the most. Now, that book could do nothing, right? That book could go nowhere. Nothing happens to it. But then cover A is not worth anything either, right? So your best bet as far as gambling goes concerned, like if you think this book is going to be hot, is getting the rarest one of it.
I mean, that makes sense to me. Where does that come from as far as the cover A? Because I've always been told the cover A is the one. Where does that come from? That's the one that will hold value if any of them hold value. And maybe that's just talking about the normal variants, like cover A versus BC. You're not talking about these limited, like 1 in 100 or 1 in 500 books. I think that's probably a significant difference.
Yeah, so there's I think Walking Dead did this, was it 115, I want to say, where they did like cover 1, like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, all the way to K or something like that, or M or N or something, or maybe O. I don't know how many did. But they're all just different covers. Obviously, in that case, you want cover A, I guess. I don't think this goes with, if you have the rare variants where they have a limited print run, or they're like the King Spawn, where it's 1 out of 250. Right, think of it this way. King Spawn had a print run of 500,000 of cover A, basically the first one. That's not rare. And it will always be cheap, because there's going to be, lo and behold, give it like 6 months, you're going to see someone selling 100 copies of King Spawn 1 on eBay. And it'll go for maybe $100 to $200 in the beginning, but over time it's going to go less and less, because there's just going to be mountains of them that people have stockpiled. Because there's not 500,000 people that want to read King Spawn #1.
Right. No, that makes sense. And that'll lead me to question 8, which is, and I've asked this question of a lot of people. I'm just interested from the dealer aspect of it, like what you see on your side is, based on what I've seen you're really dealing in older books, Silver Age, Golden Age, some of those books where there's true profit to be made. But there's a lot of people that are moving to the indie books, almost not away from the big two. Everybody's got their nostalgia from that standpoint. I love Superman. I love Batman. I'm always going to read those guys. But there is some interest in the indie titles. And I was just wondering, on the dealer side, are you seeing that at all? But you're not dealing in a ton of modern books, are you?
No, I don't really deal in that many modern books. It's just... the profit margins are a lot harder in modern books, and they're a lot more, because you have to take into consideration, when you send something to CGC, it's going to take you 6 months to get back, right? Where is that book going to be in 6 months? What if the hype is gone for this modern book and it's dead in the water? What if, some of these books series that you're reading end all of a sudden, and then no one cares about them anymore? Or what if the series goes in a bad turn and people are like, what? And now they don't want it anymore. When you have older books, like you have an Avengers 8, first appearance of Kang, In 6 months, I know exactly where book's gonna be. It's gonna be worth more than it is today, right?
Right.
So because I know Kang is coming out and Avengers probably 5, and that's not going to be released for like maybe 2 or 3 years. So it's just going to be slowly going up this whole time. So yeah, I know that with a modern book, it's like there's no way to tell, right? So I don't know if I answered your question.
No,
Now
you did. No, I actually like the way you answered it, and it actually leads me to question 9. You segued perfectly into question 9, and I've heard you talk about this. I know you did a video on this, and you've mentioned it a couple times while we've been talking. The CGC turn times.
Mm-hmm.
How is that affecting your business as a dealer?
Oh, massively, 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 massively. So we send books every single month. And then generally we get them back within a nice, even time frame. But when all of a sudden their time, walkthroughs used to be same day. What happens when now I can't remember what it is, 12 days or something now, something like that. What happens when I depend on getting that money back, that book back as soon as possible so I can list it for sale, so I can make money as quick as possible so I have more money to buy other stuff. Every time they slow it down more and more and more, and since it was so abruptly, all this slowdown, it basically, I stopped making revenue. So I couldn't, I have a lot of, I would say, lost revenue. But guess what? Overhead still comes every month. Paychecks still have to get sent out. Employees still have to get made or paid. Vendors still have to get paid. Everything has to, you can't, that stuff, overhead doesn't stop. So when that flow stopped, it definitely hurt. And we would have we try to list every Wednesday. And then we had multiple Wednesdays where we had nothing to list, like in a row, back to back. Wow. And that really affects our revenue.
So that's crazy. Yeah. So, and and I know CGC is, I guess, the preferred choice as far as the market is concerned, or the market has deemed it the preferred choice. But why not? Why? I believe, this is what I believe, that at some point it's going to get so bad that people are just going to start going to CBCS. And it's going to that will correct itself, because people are going to be like, look, I don't care about CGC. I can't get my book back for a year. I can send it over here and get it back in 3 months, whatever it is. And do you see it that way, or do you think it's still going to be the preferred brand?
I think CGC is going to be the preferred brand. I think being slow is not enough to stop them, because you have to look at it from the point of someone that wants to protect their investment. Because CBCS does not go for the same value in the same grade as a CGC book.
Right.
And I've sold multiple of both, and I know that from doing it. And if you have a $10,000 book and you have to wait an extra 2 months to get it back, do you care, or would you rather protect that $10,000 investment? So that's
you're going to protect the $10,000 investment. No, that makes sense. It just seems like, and I don't know, with, was it Blackstone that bought them, Jay-Z,
yeah.
You had that whole group, I don't know, because it is getting pretty ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I mean, it's getting ridiculous how long it's taking to get a book back. Like, I haven't even seen any books out in a little bit. I'm just like, I'll just wait. I mean, as far as, and really for your business, the resale is in the grade, right? I mean, you get a book raw that you can get pressed and cleaned, and maybe what was a VG is now, a fine or whatever, and there's a price bump there.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to do the grade to be able to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's my job, is like, I'm a dealer. So like, I get it. There's people out there that like, they'll send out their books and they just want it back as quick as possible. But usually those are people that are dealing in like books that are in the couple $100 range, not in thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. You think you're going to like take a chance on a company that can't get you as much money if your book's $1 million? So CGC will always have those high-end people, which then will trickle down to lower and lower and lower. Yeah, there'll be people that use CBCS, but I mean, CBCS still has long wait times as well.
Yeah.
So,
do you think that's just the increase in the market, where people we've had a lot more people jump into the hobby. People are getting books graded. Do you think that's why it's a slowdown, or is it just poor business practices?
There's a mix of that, but there's also, because I don't know how it is over where you guys live, but in California, drive anywhere, every single business has massive signs saying we will hire, paying way more than minimum wage. Minimum wage here is about 14, 15 bucks an hour, depending on your company size. There's people like Panda Express paying almost $20 an hour. $20 an hour for Panda Express. I don't know if you have Panda Express over there.
We do, yeah. And it's just well, no, and we're seeing that here too.
Yeah.
You know, in my field, it's not as bad because people are making pretty good salaries, so you can't make enough not, staying off work. But like I went over, there's a Wendy's beside my office, and I had to grab something real quick for lunch the other day. So I walked over there and I went to the door and it was locked. And I was like, what in the world? And so I had to walk through the drive-through. And I was like, why is the lobby closed? Is it a COVID thing? They were like, no, we can't get anybody to work.
Yeah.
And I think that could be the problem, and I don't know that I really thought about that for that either.
So, I mean, I don't think CGC and CGCS are paying people $100,000 to grade comics and, do their shipping department and all that kind of stuff. So there's probably people wearing lots of hats. They won't pay them people enough to convince them not to stay at home and this collect government money. So, yeah, I mean, it's insane to me. Like, there's some restaurant like McDonald's or something saying you could fill out your application online, just through your phone. And even some places are giving you like gift cards just to fill out an application. Like they'll give you a $25 gift card to the restaurant just to fill out an application. It's crazy. It is crazy. It's just no one wants to work. And so when you're dealing with a company like CBCS or CGC, yeah, maybe there's people that make decent money at the company, but do you think their shipping department people are making, $50K a year? No, or whatever, enough to convince them to not stay at home and collect unemployment. So I think that has a lot to do with it. There's just like a lot of people that aren't making enough money.
Interesting answer, man. Like I said, I hadn't really thought about that aspect of it, and I haven't really heard anybody talk about that aspect of it. Maybe you did, but anywhere else, I haven't heard that. So, all right, question 10, last one. And I want to talk about, you've said it, that you started your YouTube channel because you're into music. You play, and you're hoping to share your music with people, through YouTube. So I just want, where did the love of music come from? Did you grow up playing? Does your family play? Like, what's the deal there?
No one in my family plays. No one that I know of growing up played. One day I just listened. My friend for his birthday said, hey, can you get me this Blink-182 album? And I'm out of the state. And I'm like, sure. I got it. And at the time we were working for my dad, and we worked in this massive barn sorting all these comics. And, we each had like a few CDs. And so I listened to that CD so many times, and every time it was my turn to pick, I picked the Blink-182 CD again. And he's like, again? And I'm like, yes. And I just fell in love with Blink-182. Then I fell in love with, that opened my eyes to a different style of music. And then I, since then I was like, I want to be a musician. That's what I said I wanted to be. And then I listened to the Goo Goo Dolls, and I was like, I want to write songs after listening to them. And so that's literally just by 2 CDs. That's literally made me move away from Washington to California. I still pursue music. It's hard. Like, I love comic books and everything, but like when I play music, it feels like this is what I'm meant to do. Even though I haven't found that much success, but still, it's like my true love.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's awesome, man. No, I grew up in Eastern Kentucky. We are very musical people. Mm-hmm. Like growing up, I used to sit really where I'm at right now, my grandmother's house, sit where my house is now. And she had the shed out back, and her family would come in. Her brothers would come in from out of town, and they would bring banjos and they would play. They would play banjos and they would sing mandolins, and I loved it. Loved it. And I still love that kind of music today. Now, my taste changed a bit as I got older, and I became more of a rock and roll guy. I'm a huge Metallica fan. Like they're my favorite band of all time. but like, what kind of music do you play? I know it's linked on your channel, so
Yeah.
and I have not had a chance to listen to it yet, but it is absolutely something I'm going to do. So, what kind of music do you play?
The music I play is kind of like it's modern music, but it's a mix of kind of there's like a little bit of country pop flavors in there, modern, modern more like pop sound, um, but definitely, it really depends on who's listening to it, and they pick up different little flavors thing. But I would say like if I had to pick a generic genre, I would say like pop rock. But
I
there's
got
like
you.
definitely little flavors of everything that I'm into in it.
So now, what instruments do you play?
I play guitar and sing, and I write all the songs.
Cool. That's awesome, man. Yeah, I was just in Nashville not too long ago, and you kind of go down on Music Row there, or
Mm-hmm.
it's Broadway, and all those bars, all those honky tonks, and just the history. Like, we have a girl from here who I went to high school with. Her mom and dad lived in the house next to my grandmother. Have you ever heard of the Pistol Annies?
Yes, I
Miranda
have.
Lambert,
Yep.
Angelina Presley, Holler Annie is a really good friend of mine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's
and
cool.
like, yeah, we grew up together and went to college at the same place. And she used to play music all the time when we were in the apartment. Like, people from around here always played. I never got into it necessarily. I played ball and did some things like that. I never really got into playing music. I always kind of wanted to learn how to play guitar. And I may take that up at some point when I retire. Try to learn how to pick a little bit. I used to like to sit around and drink beer and sing. That's what I like to do, and it was fun. And I don't sing well, but no, Ange, when we were in college, we all went to EKU together. She'd play at these little bars. When she comes around, I still see her. Her niece dances with my daughter in an elite, so I see her all the time. And she took me down through Nashville and was kind of showing me the honky tonks that she played in as she was coming up. So
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, I went
yeah,
to Nashville. I didn't play at any places for a bachelor party for my brother, but yeah, like a big dream of mine is to go on like a decent sized tour and tour, the US and then play at all these places and stuff like that. That's like kind of like a goal of mine that I'm working
that's
towards.
awesome, man. Well, who would you rank as your top five? Like
Top
right
five.
now, either all time or right now. Give me
Oh,
both.
definitely Goo Goo Dolls is probably number one, and then Blink 182. After that, the list just kind of changes with day by day, but definitely Blink and Goo Goo Dolls. Those are like I look at it. It's like they're like my mother and father of music that birthed me. Is how I kind of look at it. Without them, I would have never like. It's weird music, like you hear with your ears, but it's actually you listen with your heart.
You really do.
And yeah, and it's interesting to me that it's like you could hear a song and maybe it does nothing to you emotionally, but then I could hear that same song and it just like hits me so like with like such emotion and passion that it's just like makes you do crazy things like, hey, I should move to California to pursue music.
I think that's awesome, man. I think that's cool. It's and it may happen for you. I mean, like I said, Ange just moved to Nashville and started playing, and ended up she was writing songs and ended up meeting Ashley Monroe, and Ashley Monroe became friends with Miranda Lambert, and then Ashley tells Miranda, "Hey, I think you would dig this girl's vibe and the way that she writes." And so they all met, and then they formed the Pistol Annies. It's crazy how that stuff happens, but
I know.
it's really neat. I think that's cool. Like, I know for me, growing up, my uncle loved Motown,
Hmm.
and I talk about being with him all the time. And he was always listening to Smokey Robinson, the Four Tops, the Miracles, the Earth, Wind, and Fire. I mean, like, he loved that music. And so I listened to that a lot. My dad was into country, Hank Williams, Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, those guys. And so I love everything. Like, I like Tupac to Metallica to Johnny Cash. Like, my musical taste is eclectic, but it's a big part of me. And you're right, you listen with your ears, but you feel it in your heart, man. Like, it really can. Music can, and it's funny too how I can remember things based on songs. songs.
It's the only form of a time machine, I think. You can hear a song, you can remember, I was here with my friends, we did this like 30 years ago, you can remember everything, or I was with a girl or a guy or whatever it is, and you can remember everything. All these memories just come flooding back to you, you know, and it's just like, it's just so interesting. Music is, it's just so powerful, and I don't think people realize how powerful it is. Like, watch a movie and pretend that there's no, and like if you can mute all the music, a dramatic scene, like a death scene or a sad scene, won't be as sad, won't be as dramatic. It just, music is like life's enhancer.
It really is. No, I love that. I love that. No, and it is. It's a big part of who I am. I listen to music daily. My daughter has been getting into vinyl. You know, I know that's coming back. So my youngest daughter, I didn't think that either one of my daughters were collectors like I am, but I'm learning that my baby is. She's not a baby anymore. She's 13. My God, she started 8th grade today. It's ridiculous. But she likes these Smushmallow things that she gets at Walgreens. But she really, it surprises me. We'll be driving down the road and she'll play a song. And I'm like, where did you hear that? Because it's something that I love. Like the other day, she pulled out a Kiss song. And I'm like, how do you know who Kiss is? You know, and I was like, She was like, TikTok, you know, but we enjoy going together and looking at old vinyl. And, you know, we got her a record player for Christmas, and we, you know, got her a nice little setup, and we're working on a vinyl collection for her, you know, different vinyl. I said, it's just, and music is timeless, man. There's just things that you hear that, you know, you go back, like I said, I can listen to Smokey Robinson right now, and it takes me back. I don't know, to my uncle riding around the truck with him, going around and, you know, digging in barns. I don't know. It's a beautiful thing, man. It really is. It is. David, man, I really enjoyed this. I hope you did. I had a blast. So
it was a blast of these. Yeah, fun.
It was a lot of fun. Tell everybody where they can find you. Like, I know you're working on your website right now. Kind of tell them where, if they want to buy books from you, where can they pick them up?
Yeah, so we have an eBay store, but all our stuff is on collectorscomics.com. That's pretty much where, you know, that's our website where we list everything. But yeah, I'm also on YouTube, Comic Book Investments. So if you want to watch comic book investment type channel stuff and Financial Fridays and all that kind of stuff, I'm on there as well. Yeah.
Awesome. And I'll link everything for, you know, David and Comic Book Investments down in the description below. What an interesting conversation. And it took a couple of different turns for me there that I wasn't necessarily expecting. So that was fun. Go check Comic Book Investments out. It's a really good channel. I watch it all the time. I'm not a commenter. I'm one of those people that listens while I drive. YouTube has almost become my radio in some senses. Yeah. But yeah, so go check him out. A lot of good information on there. It's a really kind of straightforward approach to what books are out there right now and reactions to trailers and things like that. I mean, it's just a really straightforward approach, and I dig it. So I think you guys will too. Go check my guy out here. Remember, and as I always end these things, remember I have the code still going with Street Level Hero LA. That's STC10. If you use that code, you get 10% off your order, but most importantly, 25% of your overall order is donated to the American Cancer Society for Cancer Research. Very important cause to me. It's gone very well. Like I've said it 100 times. We were going to do it for a short period of time, and we keep making money or keep raising money, so we just keep it going. So go check that out. Check out all the stuff in the description below for Comic Book Investments and SmallTown Collectibles. We appreciate you guys coming and hanging out with us for a little bit. This has been 10 Questions.